Welcome back to Harbour Unboxed. Today we will be replying to some comments, or I'll be replying to some comments left on yesterday's benchmark comparison video between the Radeon RX 5700 XT and GeForce RTX 2060 Super. After receiving a surprisingly large amount of requests to revisit that comparison, I decided it was time to make it happen. Had a bit of spare time on my hands, so we got a 35 game benchmark done. So we've done that now, and boy oh boy did we receive a lot of feedback. As is often the case with our community here on YouTube, the majority of it was positive, supportive, and constructive. So thank you very much for that. We always very much appreciate it. There was also a lot of interesting feedback, which I want to cover in this video, as well as some confusion, which I think is equally important to address. So let's start with a popular one. Why did we compare the 5700 XT to the RTX 2060 Super? This came up a lot, like probably a lot more than some of you might have expected. And those posing the question, they weren't asking why did we need to provide an updated benchmark, rather they were saying that the 2060 Super and 5700 XT aren't direct competitors and it's unfair on Nvidia to compare the faster 5700 XT to the slower 2060 Super. Instead, many believe the 5700 XT should have been compared with the 2070 Super, and we're just using the 2060 Super to make AMD look better because we're AMD bias, shills. You guys know, the usual stuff. Of course, that's not the case at all. The reason we made this comparison was because both GPUs are coming at the exact same $400 US MSRP. So you can typically buy AIB cards of similar quality for around the same price. They're the same price. There's really no wrong comparison to be made here. You can fairly compare the 5700 XT really to either the 2060 Super or the 2070 Super, as long as with that latter comparison, the 2070 Super, you factor in price. As long as you factor that in, really no problem there. They're close enough in terms of performance that, yeah, they can be compared. The Radeon GPU really does sit somewhere, I'd say, between those two GeForce GPUs. It falls short of the 2070 Super in our testing by about 6 to 9% on average, depending on the resolution, and it beats the 2060 Super, as we just saw, by an 8 to 10% margin on average, depending on resolution. Therefore, performance-wise, it's not directly in line with either, but it does match the 2060 Super in terms of cost, making it around $100 cheaper than the 2070 Super. That means it's either a little bit faster than the 2060 Super or quite a bit cheaper than the 2070 Super, so depending on how you look at it, it competes with both. As a side note though, when I actually did compare the 5700 XT head-to-head with the 2070 Super, we did that around 7 months ago now, a lot of AMD fans cried foul play, saying that we were Nvidia shills and paid by Nvidia to make AMD look bad, despite the fact that I clearly pointed out that the Radeon GPU was the better value choice, and that's ultimately what I would go with. So, as is often the case, you can't please everyone, but that's not what we aim to do here, so let's just move on. Actually, before moving on, James weighed in with a classic fanboy zinger. Apparently, in yesterday's video, when I said I would grab the 5700 XT every time, that gave James McInnes the feeling that I'm a Green Team fanboy. Okay, moving on. Here we have a comment from Ray Rosario, and this is one that often pops up when I give my opinion on Turing's ray tracing support. So, for some context, after talking about how DLSS 2.0 has finally proven to be a useful technology, I went on to say, I am far less sold on ray tracing support as being a useful feature in the future, but I'm more than happy to be wrong on that one. Ray and quite a few others took this to mean that I think there's no future for ray tracing, that I believe it's a dead technology and that it will never make its way into games in any kind of meaningful way. Now, that could not be further from the truth. Ray tracing is the future, and we've said this many times on the channel to date. What I'm saying here is, what I mean is, I don't believe the RTX 2060 Super's hardware support for ray tracing is powerful enough to ever take full advantage of the technology in a meaningful way. Right now, when you enable ray tracing in the handful of games that support it, in my opinion, the effects aren't that noticeable unless you go looking for them, and even then, I don't think they're super amazing. And that's because I believe the current hardware just can't utilize the technology to a degree where it makes a really noticeable difference to the image quality. Not only that, but enabling ray tracing right now absolutely smashes frame rates to the point where you just wouldn't use it. At least I wouldn't. So to recap, there are a few instances where DLSS works exceptionally well and you'd 100% use it, but I haven't seen a single example where I would say, yep, let's turn ray tracing on, that looks fantastic, and the performance hit is well worth the improved visuals. And I'm just not convinced we'll ever see that with an RTX 2060 Super. But as I said in yesterday's video, I'm more than happy to be wrong on that one. I just don't think at this point in time, you could say I'm wrong. Maybe there'll be a future game that looks amazing with ray tracing enabled and the performance hit may not be too extreme, or it'll be justified by how good the visuals look. But in my opinion, we haven't seen that yet. And yeah, I don't think we will. But I do believe it will happen with future GPU generations. Another bias from AMD Fanboy, a guy who compare Vega 56 with GTX 1070 and not GTX 1070 Ti, a guy who compare RTX 2060 Super with RX 5700 XT with that DLSS enabled comparison, or turn ray tracing on RX 5700 XT and show me how much FPS you got. Even on my GTX 1080, I have enabled all RTFX on control in 900p resolution and I'm getting stable 30 FPS. You are just a joke and well-paid YouTuber by AMD. Okay, so here we have a disgruntled viewer who doesn't appear happy about a few things, and I'll just slowly work through them for those of you interested. So the Vega 56 versus GTX 1070 comparison, that's kind of like the 5700 XT versus RTX 2060 Super or 2070 Super. There's really no wrong or, well, no right comparison. No wrong, no right comparison there. It doesn't really matter too much. They all make sense depending on what you're looking at. So that one's a bit, I don't know, let's say silly. Let's be kind and say silly. I think those GPUs, they were in direct comparison for about 3 months, the 1070 and the Vega 56 before the 1070 Ti came along. But again, no wrong option there. And everyone knows how the 1070 and 1070 Ti perform relative to one another. So yeah, you just have to adjust the price if you want to use the 1070 Ti. The comments about DLSS are interesting, but I think we have some more mature viewers that have asked similar questions, so I'll address those in a moment. The ray tracing comment, kind of funny though. Imagine bragging about being able to enjoy ray traced reflections at a stable 30 FPS on a once $500 US GPU at 900p. Who would have thought that gamers would be so hungry for overdone reflections at low resolutions with premium GPUs? Game developers must have been doing it wrong all this time. Forget 60 FPS plus at 1440p. 900p with 30 FPS is apparently just fine as long as you've gone absolutely ham with the reflections. Okay, enough playing around with what I hope is a troll comment. Let's move on to some more serious comments. There were a lot of comments like this one from Michael asking if we would start testing with DLSS enabled in games that support the revised 2.0 revision, and quite a few also criticizing us for not already testing with it enabled. So let's talk about all of that. This really is a bit of a tricky one. We've been talking through it with our Patreon members over the last few months on our monthly live shows, but we haven't really talked about it on the main channel. So I think it's about time we did that. In short, moving forward, I will, in addition to the results we already provide, so the native resolution results, I'll include a second set with DLSS enabled in the games that support DLSS 2.0, which for our current lineup includes Wolfenstein Youngblood and Control. Tim believes in those two titles that DLSS provides quality that is comparable to running at the native resolution, possibly even better in some areas, he says. But still, for an apples to apples comparison, it's not native 1440p or 4K, depending on what resolution you're testing at. But NVIDIA does such a good job of, let's say, faking it that doesn't really matter. Now, the main reason why we'll start to include DLSS results alongside native resolution testing for GPUs such as the RTX 2060 Super is because we believe GeForce owners should play with DLSS enabled. There's really no reason to play something like Wolfenstein Youngblood or Control with it disabled. So upon reflection, not ray traced reflections, my own reflection or self-reflection, yeah, that should have been included. And I will be making an update shortly to include this going forward, and that's something we will continue to do. So yeah, constructive criticism. Thank you for the feedback, guys. That is something we will work to include. However, I should just note that for the comparison we just made, it won't really change things too much, at least not right now. As I said, of the 35 games tested, just 2, so out of all 35 games, just 2 of them support DLSS 2.0, and there's just 2 more games on the market with support, and that's MechWarrior 5 and Deliver Us the Moon. I don't know anyone that's actually played Deliver Us the Moon. It sounds like it's perhaps, maybe this is too harsh, an Ashes of the Singularity tech demo type game. Could be wrong on that one. If I am, feel free to correct me below in the comments section if need be, and maybe we can do a reply to comments video. It's also worth noting that not a single game is yet to be released with DLSS 2.0 support, so no games have hit shelves and offered that feature straight away. Control and Youngblood, which are 2 of the games that we test with, they were both updated half a year or more after launch. And so far, none of this year's biggest launches, such as what we got, Doom Eternal, Resident Evil 3, we both tested those with a lot of GPUs recently. Neither of those used the feature. So that means so far it doesn't really look like it's going to become a new standard or anything like that. And I think it's fair to say we'd probably only expect to see it in NVIDIA-sponsored titles. And this is a big problem, particularly given that Jensen promised us 2 years ago now that DLSS would act more like a FPS plus better image quality toggle for all our favorite games. And yeah, as I said, it's now 2 years later and we have 4 titles. That's it, 4 titles with DLSS 2.0. I'm not really sure what's coming in the near future. And then we have the 2060 Super. That's been on the market for almost a year now. So while it is nice that DLSS is no longer the dumpster fire that is in Battlefield 5, for example, we're a long way from it being something that makes RTX graphics cards a must-have item. As I said in the comparison video yesterday, it's also possible AMD will come up with their own DLSS-like technology, though I'm not saying buy a 5700 XT in the hope that that will happen, just like I'm not saying buy a 2060 Super because DLSS 2.0 support might be widespread in the near future. I'm not sure I can recommend the 5700/5700 XT to buy anymore right now, as there's a big possibility more heavy future titles are using DLSS 2.0. It's like 10% less performance in all games, but 30% faster in presumably heavy to run DLSS titles, and better drivers to boot. I really hope AMD can create their own version of DLSS though. That would be great. Yeah, look, so if AMD could come up with something similar, that would be an ideal solution for them. As for not being able to recommend the 5700 series right now, due to a lack of DLSS, well, yeah, it's like I just said. While the technology looks great with the second revision, game support is still very lackluster, and I wouldn't buy on the hope that the 2060 Super will crush the 5700 XT in a wide range of future games, thanks to DLSS 2.0 support. Still no DLSS 2.0 video. Hey, come on, take a look. I see comments like this pop up quite often on our various social medias and YouTube and whatnot, but yeah, people are asking us to look into a game such as Wolfenstein and Control with a DLSS 2.0 update. It's kind of weird because we've already done that, guys. Tim provided an extremely in-depth video back in, I think it was like mid-February now. It's titled something like DLSS Revisited. Pretty obvious, I think it's like a 2020 update or something. But yeah, spoiler alert, Tim was very impressed. Before people massively started to complain about drivers, you, as in us Harbor Unboxed, promote 5700 XT for almost a year without mentioning driver issues. After people massively started to complain about driver issues, you, Harbor Unboxed, promote 5700 XT, but mention the driver issues with famous "works fine on my machine" excuse. After AMD somewhat fixed the drivers, almost a year later, you, Hardware Unboxed, promote 5700 XT. Look, it was really difficult to gauge if the driver complaints were real, and to be honest, it still is, especially when you, so me, myself, my colleague Tim, and basically everyone I know with a 5700 series graphics card, they aren't having any issues. Other YouTubers also haven't been too vocal in reporting major issues. There were a few complaints from Gamers Nexus, but I think most of them seem to be related to stuff like fan profiles driving them crazy and the Whatman utility being not a good utility for a yep. But I think there were maybe some other problems. I have to admit, I haven't watched all their content. Like us, they did create quite a lot of 5700 XT content, so maybe they found a bigger issue, but it seems like most of it relates to the stuff just mentioned. And I did speak with plenty of other YouTubers and receive feedback from them. Yeah, no one has really reported issues themselves. They've heard of other people having issues, but I don't recall anyone telling me they've seen them firsthand. And when we put out our initial AMD driver issue video, Kyle and Paul didn't forget your name, Paul. It's okay. So yeah, Kyle from Bitwit and Paul from Paul's Hardware. They said they've not had any issues either. So this was all sort of news to them. If they had issues, they would have reported it, made a video on it. But yeah, both of them said they've been using the 5700 series cards without a single issue. So it's extremely difficult for us to report on an issue in any kind of meaningful way when we have had zero issues ourselves, no evidence of any problems. It makes the whole thing very difficult. And it's not an excuse. We're not trying to cover for AMD here. That's just an absurd claim in my opinion. Believe me when I say AMD 100% did not want us to make that poll, and they sure as hell didn't want us making the video talking about widespread claims of driver issues, but we went ahead and made the video anyway. We really did push AMD to make the driver issue their #1 priority, and I think we were one of the few tech reviewers who helped to get a better result for Radeon users. So not patting ourselves on the back, just saying we did go after AMD on that one. And yeah, I think we've already seen some results from that. And that's everything I wanted to or felt that needed to be addressed. As I said, there will be some updated testing soon with and without DLSS for the GeForce GPUs, and then we'll be adding the RTX 2070 and 2070 Super to the results as well, since that has been heavily requested since yesterday's video. So yeah, hopefully you guys will enjoy that. There's the YouTube stuff, you guys know about that. We got merch, Patreon. Patreon's really cool. We've got our Discord server, so great community there if you need help with anything or want to discuss new technology or just really anything, talk about driver issues, anything you want. It's a great place. There's no trolling, no attacking, nothing like that. Just a lot of really good discussion. So a cool place to hang out if you want to avoid all the mess on forums and other places like that. We've also got our live stream that's coming up in like a week. Q&As. Yeah, I think that's everything. But yeah, just thank you very much for watching. We do appreciate you guys supporting us, watching our work and helping contribute. So yeah, I'm your host, Steve. Thank you for watching. No, I'll see you again next time. That's it.